Eccoci qua. Buongiorno Lupo, ciao, and welcome to my shadow. So this is the presentation that I gave to my schoolmates last night. It's about shadow, the concept of the shadow. I'm gonna record it because it was fun, so I'm just gonna record it for you. It should be done in Italian, really. Nah. Anyways, so welcome to my shadow. This is how I started it for them. I'm gonna play it the same way that I did it for them. So began, when I decided to present on the shadow, I didn't have a clue that I was going to throw myself into all the twists and turns that the shadow can bring. It was hard, it was tough, it was angry, I was angry, it was sad, it was happy, it was a combination of all the feelings that you could potentially mention, things that happen, events, you name it. Nonetheless, when I came to put together the presentation a couple of nights ago, I did realize, I was like, okay, so this happened. It took me a while to come to this point. I hate PowerPoint. So all of this is the shadow, but all of this is what truly completes me. In other words, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And this is in tune with what we've been studying. So let's go into the next. So what is the shadow really? And here is the shadow. So what is the shadow really? So in terms of Carl Jung was the psychologist who coined the term shadow, and he said the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. That is to say, when the individual remains undivided and does not become conscious of his inner opposite, the world must perforce act out the conflict and be torn into opposing halves. In the words of Batman, sometimes it's only madness that makes us what we are. Moving on. Look how my shadow moves across. Let's move up here. So what is the shadow really made up of? What are the ingredients of the shadow? I've copied and pasted some of these parts, so you may recognize them from somewhere. I will do references after. So generally speaking, the shadow is the dark side of something, somebody. It's whatever makes us feel uncomfortable, makes us feel guilty, makes us feel resentful, makes us feel feelings that are not necessarily like happy and joyful. Repressed desires, uncivilized impulses, childish fantasies, resentments. But it's not only that. So it's not, fear not. It's not only that. The shadow is not just the dark night of the soul. The shadow is not the dangerous neighbor next door. The shadow can contain positive traits. It could be a skill, an ability, something that we've been suppressing for far too long that we're probably not even aware of. You know, when I started painting, I had no clue I could paint, and I was actually one of those people who despised paintings. I knew though that it was something that I had to take out because of my vivid imagination. So how do I know? How does this come up? Normally it comes up as the shadow erupts like wine talking, and we all know what this means. Nonetheless, these impersonal, undefined characteristics of ourselves are indeed ourselves. And it only took the dangerous neighbor next door to bring them out in this mechanism called projection. Interesting. So perhaps, do we all need to face our shadow to recognize our wholeness? Perhaps. Well, I know you're really scared now. I'm scared too, and so I was, the first time that we started to talk about shadow in my therapy or whatever. Whenever I heard about, oh, I'm sorry. How do I go back? Oh, no. Here. I'm really scared now you saw the other. Damn. For the purpose of this exercise, then, to make your sleep a little bit more enjoyable, I decided to keep it short and sweet. because that's the idea behind the shadow. The shadow is our friend. The shadow is not scary. We should not be afraid of it. We should befriend the shadow like we befriend ice cream. And just like any other an Italian ice cream, the shadow is natural. So let's remind that to ourselves. And it's effortless. It should be effortless. It happens effortless, like our daily meditations. In the words of Carl Jung, even if we think, okay, it's natural, effortless, Carl Jung comes in and says the shadow is the shadow. Unfortunately, there can be no doubt that man is, on the whole, less good than he imagines himself or wants to be. I'm sorry to say that. Everyone carries a shadow. The less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. At all counts, it forms an unconscious snag, thwarting our most well-meant intentions. So what do we do then? When it comes to confronting a shadow, my best and favorite option is just to face it, like we do with everything in life. In other words, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. But then, if you're still scared like me and you need a little bit of a helping hand from a friend, you can choose the path of least resistance proposed by Dr. Connie Zweig, who is an American author, and she used to be a psychotherapist. And she put together a profound manual called Romancing the Shadow, which I found out when I did my foundation in psychotherapy in London in 2015. I read it, I embodied my shadow, and I started this process called shadow work. I guess if that makes you feel better, I guess. It makes me feel better though, because it's not only Batman and Joker. It's scary. Joker is scary. So Dr. Connie Zweig, who had, there's a few interviews online that you can watch, said the rewards are profound. Shadow work enables us to alter our self-sabotaging behavior so that we can achieve a more self-directed life. In other words, we're still talking about self-referral consciousness, which is that place where we access, that place that we return to when we do our meditations. Whether I'm going to move my shadow again. Here, look. Whether we decide to romance a shadow, transcend a shadow, integrate a shadow, we're still pretty much following the same process. The process is the donut. Look, beautiful this donut is. It's a circle, it's a diagram, it's whatever, however you want to call this graph. It represents what happens in our search for greater wholeness of our own selves. So to achieve greater wholeness, self-actualization, self with a capital S, individuation, we go inwards naturally. And that's when we encounter all these little elements, the elements that make up the big picture. We connect the outer to the inner, we connect the inner, the relative to the absolute. We connect the personal unconscious with the collective unconscious. We connect the persona with the animus, ego with shadow. Whatever we do, we're following the same process, but the secret is that, and I'm telling you, this is very important, like never hit the honey. The secret is not to oppose the process. So do not oppose. And this is what Maharishi said. I didn't say that. Maharishi said that. Do not oppose, because in opposing, the tenderness of the feeling level is crushed. That is why we speak the truth, but see that you are speaking delicately, like honey. Do not speak non-truth, and do not speak in a non-sweet way. I told you it's all about honey. And so that the feeling is nourished. It's all about honey. And it's all about ice cream at the end. The reason why I bring ice cream into the picture is that Dr. Connie Zweig, because if you're like my professor who said, oh, I never heard that about the shadow. The example that Dr. Connie Zweig gave during one of her presentations was, there's a woman at home waiting for the husband to call. The husband is out for work for quite a long time. He comes in, he calls, but he doesn't call all the time. When it doesn't call, she feels lonely. She has a feeling of loneliness and she reaches out for the ice cream in the freezer. And that the ice cream becomes a shadow because it's not the feeling of loneliness, it's the ice cream in this particular case. If you investigate, there is a feeling there, and that's the feeling of loneliness. Once you romance the ice cream, and you romance that side of yourself that wants the ice cream, you may end up quitting leaving your husband altogether. I'm not sure, but you bring in that sweetness to your life, which brings us back to the ice cream and brings us back to the idea of romance in the shadow. So in all of this, I'm just going to conclude this. I'm going to make it easy for you in some bullet points without the bullets, because we want to make it easy for us and sweet and simple and not violent. When we are confronted with a shadow, whether it is the Joker or whether it's way too much ice cream, we recognize that feeling, in this case, the feeling of loneliness. We don't set expectations. We establish a regular, nurturing relationship with that uncomfortable side of ourselves, ice cream. We dialogue with our shadow. There's no reason why you shouldn't dialogue with the ice cream, but it matters. That's the only thing. So we apply, like we learned in this class, a critical eye to it and towards others. So you can apply critical eye doesn't mean to criticize. It means to see the different perspectives and act accordingly. We acknowledge that unfortunately it is not a fast process. It's not happening yesterday. It is a slow process, and nonetheless, we're not only talking about Batman and Joker. It's not only Jesus and Judas. It's not only Satan or God. Once we are on this heroic path, and I guess we all are tonight and today and wherever, the shadow will eventually turn into ice cream, like I said, sweet and natural. And even if sometimes too much, we shall continue to taste it. All in all, we keep on doing it, just like our meditations. So keep up the good shadow work. Don't forget that shadow is good. Lots of love and see you soon. Bye-bye.